Today we're taking a look at the Shapeshifter, which is the latest game by Greenboy Games, and if you haven't heard of them before, they've actually been around on the Game Boy scene for quite a while now. There are 5 releases that I've done videos on previously, and you can go and check those out. Let's just say I wasn't entirely satisfied with all of these, but if you go and watch the video then you'll see what I mean. But let's see whether they've actually improved this time with the Shapeshifter. Before we start, this video is sponsored by Bifrost Bridge Studios. They seem to have gone a bit quiet on the game dev and animation front, unfortunately, but they do share a lot of fan art and updates to their graphic novel over on Patreon, so check the links in the description if you think any of this looks interesting to you. And now with that said, let's take a look at the Shapeshifter and see whether it's any good. Let's of course first begin with an unboxing. I can already tell that the packaging for this is so much better than their earlier releases. This one also came in a really nice protective cover for the game as well, and I can't believe it, but this was actually number 1 out of 200, and that is just amazing to own. I actually felt a bit bad ripping this seal off here, but I had to do it for the video, and I just have to say that it's a huge improvement over the previous releases that they've done. As you can see, all 4 corners are stuck down really well, unlike some of the previous ones. As you can see, once again, the side of the box wasn't really stuck down properly. It looks like they only used a tiny little bit of glue there. Also here, this is something that I learnt recently. Instead of pulling the flap up using your thumb, if you actually put something underneath it like that knife there and then lift it up, you won't actually damage the flap in the middle like you would do normally. As you can see there, it also comes with a really nice certificate, some stickers, this really interesting wheel, which unfortunately isn't actually used in the game, it's only used when you're booting the game up, which I think is a kind of copy protection thing. Here's a look at the cartridge now, which looks really nice. Unfortunately, they still do use the cheap Game Boy cartridges that just say game across the top. It'd be really good if they could customize them. I think a nice green cartridge that said Greenboy across the top instead would be really cool. I was actually just informed by Greenboy Games themselves that although the outside of the cart looks exactly the same as these Repro ones here, you can see here's my Repro of Trip World and it just says game at the top, you can actually see already that the PCB inside is a much higher quality, and he said it comes from the same factory as places like First Press Games, which made Tobu Tobu Girl DX, which is a really well made game. So I decided to open them all up and have a look at the PCBs inside to see whether he was telling the truth about them being of a higher quality. And I'm really glad that I did, because not only is the PCB much higher quality than the Repro game, it also has a really nice little Greenboy Games logo at the top as well, which I didn't expect to see, so that is a really nice attention to detail. And I've also got confirmation that their next game will feature a custom cartridge as well, so I'm really looking forward to seeing how he improves the production values with the next game. Here's the little pocket guide that it comes with as well. This is actually kind of a strategy guide for the entire game, so if you're ever stuck you can just refer back to that, which I think is a really nice thing to include. And of course here's the instruction manual as well, which includes a little bit about the game, a bit about all of the different objects that you can pick up, and some of the other games that Greenboy Games have made too. So all in all, a really nice production for this one. I forgot to mention at the start of the video, but they actually also very kindly sent me over a t-shirt as well, so let's put this on before we carry on with the rest of this review. And because this is a very structured adventure game, I'm actually going to be showing all the clips from the rest of this review out of order and out of context. So although you'll see quite a lot of the game, there won't actually be any spoilers, and you won't really have any idea of when any of this occurs within the game. So with that said, let's take a look and see what the gameplay is all about. So the game begins with you waking up on a campsite in the middle of the night. After a bit of wandering around, you rescue an elf out of a well, and from there he asks you to help save the elf world from an evil wizard, and grants you a magic power which gives you the ability to transform into any animal that you touch, and that any animal that you touch makes up a huge part of this game. So as you travel through the world, it updates your location on a map, which is a really nice touch, and it makes everything feel a lot more connected. Each area that you arrive in will have a certain puzzle or challenge for you to overcome in order to proceed, usually involving finding out about the people who live and work in the area, followed by a section that isn't passable until you find a certain animal to transform into in order to backtrack and then actually progress past that point in the game. The different environments all look really nice, which is probably the game's main strong point. And it definitely shows how much Dana has improved as a designer and as an artist. I also love the use of perspective in certain scenes, like this camp here at the top of a mountain. You first see it from a distance when you arrive, but later on into the area you actually get to explore down there as well, and the perspective shift between going through the different areas looks really cool, and from what I've seen of the sequel that's coming soon as well, that looks like something that he's really putting a lot of focus in on the next game too. Unfortunately though, while I think the graphics and the atmosphere and the premise of the game are all absolutely fantastic, there are a few areas where it falls a little bit short. Most of the areas do require an awful lot of backtracking. Sometimes multiple times you'll be walking from one side of the area to the other and back again over and over again trying to find out where to go next. I think it would have been really good to have some sort of fast travel system, at least in the area that you're in, so you don't have to keep moving back and forwards through the same rooms over and over again. I did see some teleport machines dotted around, but from what I could tell, they are completely inaccessible. There were as well a few times where I got completely stuck and had to resort to this little pocket guide that came with the game here. Although it says do not open, I would have got completely stuck otherwise. One example is when you arrive on the snowy mountain and speak to someone, there's a few different choices that you're greeted with, and it's not really apparent that you need to answer just one specific choice in order to advance. So out of the answers that I was given to choose from, I chose helicopter pilot, which made sense as I'd just flown there by helicopter. Then I continued on through the game thinking nothing of it for about 10 more minutes, but it turns out that in order to actually proceed in the game, I had to answer greenhouse and then go back and touch a certain cactus in the greenhouse, which was in a completely different area, in order to advance, and there was absolutely no way that I would have figured that out on my own without this guide. As well as transforming into the different animals just to interact with things differently in the overworld, there's also a few areas as well where you can transform and then play a minigame in order to advance, and these are a really cool idea, but unfortunately in practice they don't work out quite as well as I would have liked. Take this example here of when you're playing as a grasshopper and you have to try and jump up these leaves and branches here in order to get to the top of this tree. Unfortunately the controls are really slippery and the hitbox is way too big, and this section as well went on way longer than it should have. There's like 4 screens of this, and I must have played this section for about half an hour just to be able to get through it. And there's a few other examples of this sort of gameplay being just a little bit too challenging and a little bit unpolished compared to the rest of the game. The animal swapping mechanic on the whole though is a really neat idea, and when it's done well and when it works in the context of the puzzles, I think it's a really fantastic addition to the game. I loved all the different interactions and locations, and there's actually some pretty funny moments in there too. Although the translation at times can be a bit spotty, I know that English isn't the developer's first language, but even so it would have been really good for the game to have been proofread by an English speaker first before it was released, because there's a few conversations in the game that just feel a little bit off. It's not quite bad enough to break the immersion, and you can still understand what's going on, but it would have felt just a little bit more professional if it had been proofread before it was released. As you might have seen, there is a sequel coming out very soon, which is actually up on Kickstarter in just a few days' time, so I was given an early preview of the Kickstarter page before making this video, and I have to say what I've seen so far looks really exciting. It's actually the first Game Boy game that's going to be playable across 2 different cartridges, which is just a really fascinating idea, and I can't wait to see how it plays out. I also feel like from this game he's got a really good foundation for building on it in the sequel, and I can't wait to play it. So go and check out the Greenboy Games website if you want to get this game right now, as well as all of the other games. If you want to see my other video on Greenboy Games' other releases, check the video up here, and I'll see you next week for the next episode. Goodbye!